welcome you to the Dr. Warren Gage podcast, and we are looking at the last statement of God to Job at the end of the book. We looked at chapter 38 last time when God is rebuking him out of the whirlwind, and he focused on where were you when I laid the foundations of the world? And can you control the constellations in the heavens? So he looked at the cosmic order and shamed Job, who is so, like mankind, is so insignificant in light of all of the grand cosmic order that's taking place around us. And the order is implicit in the way that everything moves regularly and according to its seasons, according to its signs, according to its nature. Everything is it's like a giant machine, and we know so little of it. Job knows so little of it. How is he then to question anything that God has done, which he knows God has done, what he has done? So we've come now to 39. Actually, at the end of 38, God shifts from talking about the cosmic order to talking about the nature of the animals, and to shaming Job about not understanding the nature of animal life, which is much closer to man. Many of them are domesticated, but many of them are wild, and so he shows him that he knows nothing about their nature, or to speak, relatively speaking, nothing about their nature or kind. He began with talking about how he feeds all of the animals, the enterprise of feeding the animals. How in the world is that done, where they are kept alive by all that God provides, the provisioning that he makes. And he talked about, can you give the prey to the lion and satisfy the appetite of the young lion? When the young cry out for food, how is it that he takes care of all of that? And that theme then continues into chapter 39, this idea of we don't really understand why all of the animals are here and what their purpose is for. So he begins by saying, do you know the time when the wild mountain goats bear young? Who ordained that there are seasons of life and birth among the animals? Can you mark when the deer gives birth? Do you number the months that they fulfill? How long is the period of gestation for each of these animals? Do you know the time when they bear their young? They bow down and bring forth their young. They deliver their offspring. The young ones are healthy. They grow strong with grain. They depart and do not return to them. So they leave the nurture of their mother. After a season, the mother takes care of them, and they're healthy and they are fed, and then they go off on their own and they don't return to their mother again. Who then set the wild donkey free, or loosed the bonds of the onager? Again, the parallelism is significant. The onager looks like a donkey. It's a wild donkey in the Asiatic steppe. And the donkey, we all know that they're known for their stubbornness. But who set them free? The wild donkey and the onager. The onager is really very parallel to the wild donkey, because the Greek form of that word was onos, which means the donkey, and agrios, the ones that are in the field, that is, the ones that are wild. So the parallelism extends actually to the name of the animal itself, although the onager is a specialized form of donkey. Whose home I have made in the wilderness where they came. The wild ones are not domesticated, obviously, and they carry on with a nature that is not known and understood very well. The homes I've made in the wilderness, and the barren laid his land his dwelling. He scorns the tumult of the city. He does not heed the shouts of the driver. He's mindful. He doesn't like people particularly. He stays away from them, and he doesn't obey any driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. He's on his own and self-sufficient. Will the wild ox be willing to serve you? Now he goes to the wild ox, the ones that are not domesticated. Will they be willing to serve you? And the answer is obviously no. Will he bed by your manger? Even if you feed him, will he stay with you and look to you, the wild ox? Can you bind the wild ox in the furrow with ropes, or will he plow the valleys behind you? If you try to tie him into something that will keep him in bondage, he will plow up the field to get away. Will you trust him because his strength is great, or will you leave your labor to him? Obviously, the answer to that is no. Will you trust him to bring home your grain and to gather it to your threshing floor? Is he able to serve you as an agent to, like a sharecropper? No, obviously not. Has no interest in man, the wild ox. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but her wings and pinnaces, are they like the kindly storks? And we've talked about this contrast before. The stork is very solicitous and careful about its young. That's why in our own mythology of children, the stork bears young, and even the young humans. In actuality, the stork in the high chimney builds its nest for its young in the high chimney in the summer when it bears, and in the late spring when there's no use for the chimney. It's not going to be a threat or anything, but it's high up, and so they can make a nest in the chimney to bear the young far from any kind of threat. That's the wisdom that God has given to the stork. But the wings of the ostrich wave proudly, for she leaves her eggs on the ground and warms them in the dust. She forgets that a foot may crush them. So she's totally unmindful when she bears her egg. She doesn't give a care about what happens to the egg. Will it come to a time of hatching or not? And she'll turn around and walk on it herself, or leave it for other predators or careless animals to step on. She forgets that a foot may crush them, or that a wild beast may break them. Why is it that God gave such solicitous care, nature, and to the nurture of its young to the stork, but nothing to the ostrich? The ostrich is totally mindless. She treats her young harshly as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain, without concern, because God deprived her of wisdom and did not endow her with understanding. That's the answer. We're searching for wisdom and understanding. That was the whole point of Job 28, the hymn to wisdom. Where can wisdom be found, and where is the place of understanding? The answer to that, obviously, is that God has given wisdom to the stork in the nurture of its young, and deprived that wisdom to the ostrich. And so there are illustrations that should tell us that wisdom ultimately comes from God himself, who can endow the nature of the animals. When she lifts herself on high, she scorns the horse and its rider. Have you given the horse strength? The horse in its striding and war, and it's known for its power and its strength. The strength of the horse and the legs of a man are remarked about in the Psalms. Have you clothed his neck with thunder? Can you frighten him like a locust? His majestic snorting strikes terror. That snorting of the horses in anger and battle. His paws in the valley, and he rejoices in his strength. He gallops into the clash of arms and mocks at fear and is not frightened. Although he can be frightened in certain times with fear and going forward if he perceives a threat, and his eyes can be blinded so that he sees only forward, and then he's not mindful of it. Why did God give him a nature like that? The quiver rattles against him, the glittering spear and javelin, yet he is mindless of that and will charge right into the hottest part of the battle, as if he's part of the cavalry. He devours the distance with fierceness and rage. I mean, he goes swifter than anyone and carries man into battle. Nor does he come to a halt because the trumpet has sounded, mindless of the trumpets at all. At the blast of the trumpet, he says, "Aha!" He smells the battle from afar, the thunder of captains and shouting. Does the hawk fly by your wisdom? The hawk, it mounts up with the currents of the sun as the air is heated and the air is rising. The hawk can take those thermal risings and achieve great heights. And yet God has given it eyes that far surpass the ability of the eyes of man to focus, and he can spot some prey, something edible, way down on the earth below and dive down to get it. Something. How can he see something that small? He spreads his wings toward the south. That's in order to catch the hot breath of the air. Does eagle mount up at your command and make its nest on high? The mighty eagle with its wingspan, 4 to 6 feet, is in view here. And again, would marvel, not understanding aerodynamics, they would wonder in the ancient world, how are these heavier than air animals able to surmount to such heights? On the rocks it dwells and resides, on the crag of the rock and the stronghold. From there it spies out the prey. Its eyes observe from afar. Its young ones suck up blood. And where the slain are, there it is, because these are the birds of prey that can smell out the possibility of carrion to come and circle in the sky until there is actually something that can be eaten when something has died. Chapter 40, Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, Shall the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? Are you going to correct me, is the idea. He who rebukes God, let him answer it. Then Job, finally, after all of this, when he's been shamed by everything in the cosmic order and his not understanding, his small understanding of anything, and his lack of wisdom in knowing why God has determined all of these signs and seasons and days and years, and then having been shamed in terms of the natural order and not understanding the animals and their purpose, Job finally answers, and he answers the Lord and says, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? So he's agreeing with God now that he cannot see anything in himself except that he dared to question God himself. And in his mind, he becomes vile for doing so. Although he was the most righteous, we remember, among men. I lay my hand over my mouth. We've seen that imagery in Isaiah 52. The kings of the earth, when they hear the Christ speaking, have nothing to say, and they actually cup their fingers and lay them over their mouth in order to demonstrate that they're waiting for wisdom to be spoken. And in the hearing of that wisdom, they are rendered dumb, nothing to offer. Once I have spoken, and I will not answer, yet yes, twice, but I will proceed no farther. This is a figure of speech. It's x plus 1. Amos is famous for this this pattern of x and x plus 1. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer, and twice, but I will proceed no further. It's an intensification. He says, there is nothing, literally nothing, less than nothing that I have to respond. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. He continues, the Lord does, Now prepare yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where the tables are turning now in the dynamic of God's response. The Lord began by answering Job with this series of rhetorical questions that demonstrated how small Job was in the whole order of things and how limited his understanding. Now he's going to question him directly. Would you indeed annul my judgment? Would you condemn me that you may be justified? Do you believe that this is a world where anything that God does can ultimately be questioned? We do question. out of our limited understanding. But when we would quarrel with God, when our questions would become a quarrel, it seems that we cross that border into transgression. We are involving ourselves in things that are not ours by nature. Have you an arm like God, or can you thunder with a voice like his? Do you have the strength of God? Or can you thunder? The voice for the word in Hebrew for voice, call, is the same as the word for thunder. But when God speaks, there is thunder. The earth shakes and the heavens shake too. Then adorn yourself with majesty and splendor, and array yourself with glory and beauty. Disperse the rage of your wrath. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him. The nature of God is to bring down the pride of his creature, whether it's the originating pride of Satan himself, expressed in the I will be what I will be aspect of the Luciferian king of Babylon in Isaiah 14, all the I wills and what he will do, or the pharaonic I wills of Exodus 15, all the resolutions of the king who's going to destroy Israel at the sea and winds up being thrown into the sea himself, or the Luciferian king who wants to rise up and overtake God at the assembly of the north and supplant his throne, and what winds up being reduced to returning to Sheol, to the grave, and taken to the lowest part of Sheol, where a bed has been prepared for him, and a blanket of worms and a bed of maggots, because he's shaming pride, and I think that's ultimately what death is. It's the shaming of the pride of the creature that has been created. So he says, look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together. Bind their faces in the hidden darkness. Then I will also confess to you that your own right hand can save you. He's challenging Job to shame the pride of his creatures, and he says, if you're able to accomplish that, which of course he can't, he's saying, then I will answer you according to your wisdom and your strength. Can you escape death? And death is the ultimate antidote to pride. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. The behemoth is probably the hippopotamus. It is a massively strong animal, and some numbers of hundreds of people a year are killed by the hippopotamus. Even though it's vegetarian, it has these tusks. If its bite is lethal, its strength is insurmountable. The power of its movement, it's able to run faster than most men. So we find it in the jungle swamps and rivers and lakes in central sub-Saharan Africa. So look now at the behemoth, this hippopotamus, which I made along with you. What is the purpose of the hippopotamus? Why did God make it? It has a purpose, just as man has a purpose. It says he eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips. That's where the strength of the wrestler is, in the hips, the stance he can take, and its power in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs are bars of iron. There is no comparison between the hippo and the strength of a man. He is the first of his ways, of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Only God could overcome him. He's compared to the horse. The ancients, the name hippopotamus comes from the Greeks, who named many of our animals, and they were descriptive as well as taxonomic. Hippo means horse, like a hippodrome, for example, and hippopotamus is a river. The land between the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, the Greeks called Meso, in the middle of the Potamoi, the two potamuses, the two rivers. So Mesopotamia became that land, and the hippopotamus is the river horse. He dwells in the river, although he is not a water creature. He can stay underwater for quite a while, but he must come up to breathe. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. He lies under these lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade. The willows by the brook surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth, though he takes it in his eyes, or as one pierces his nose with a snare. Again, he's just marveling. God is pointing out the marvels of the creatures that he's made and the strength with which he's endowed them, or the giftings that he's endowed them with that go far beyond the strength of a man. So that's quite an exercise in shaming him. He's going to continue in 41. He's talked about the mightiest of the land animals with the hippopotamus he calls Behemoth, and then he will describe Leviathan, the great fish, the monster of the sea. And he will begin by telling us, charging Job, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? So we'll look at as God continues his shaming of Job's pride as we come next time to chapter 41.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Warren Gage podcast. If you enjoyed this message, please be sure to like and subscribe to one of our channels so that you never miss an episode. We'd appreciate it if you could also leave us a review. You can find us on drwarrengage.com, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. To support the podcast and gain access to exclusive offers and content from Dr. Warren Gage, please visit our Patreon account at patreon.com/Dr. Warren Gage. We hope you join us next time on the Dr. Warren Gage podcast.